Imagine for a moment the timeline of human history as you were taught in school. You were told that civilization began with a spark. First, we learned to farm. Then, we settled down in villages, and only then, with surplus food and organized labor, did we build temples to the gods. Agriculture first, religion second. That was the rule. That was the bedrock of our understanding of the Neolithic Revolution. But what if I told you that everything we knew was wrong? 6,000 years before the first stone was laid at Stonehenge, 7,000 years before the Great Pyramid of Giza pierced the sky, a group of hunter-gatherers, people who had not yet invented the wheel, metal tools, or even pottery, did the impossible. They built a cathedral on a hill. This is Göbekli Tepe, the Potbelly Hill in southeastern Turkey. It is not just a ruin. It is an anomaly, an anachronism that defies the laws of history. It suggests that the urge to worship didn't come after civilization. It suggests that religion itself might have been the spark that created civilization. Welcomes to the 0 point in time. For decades, this site was dismissed. In the 1960s, surveyors from the University of Chicago walked right over it. They saw the limestone protruding from the earth, assumed it was a medieval cemetery, and walked away. They missed the discovery of the millennium by mere inches. It remained asleep until 1994, when a German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt arrived in the region. He wasn't looking for a cemetery. He saw the flint chips littering the ground, thousands of them. He knew immediately this was not medieval. This was prehistoric. What Schmidt uncovered beneath the red soil of Anatolia shocked the scientific world. These were not crude stones. These were megaliths, massive limestone pillars, some weighing up to 20 tons, arranged in perfect circles. But look closer. These are not just rocks. They are stylized human figures. The T shape represents the head and shoulders. Carved into the sides, you can see arms, hands, and belts. They are faceless giants watching over a congregation that vanished 12,000 years ago. Here lies the engineering paradox. Radiocarbon dating places the construction of Enclosure C at roughly 9,500 BC. In this era, humans lived in small nomadic bands. They had no beasts of burden, no oxen to pull these stones, no metal chisels to carve them. To quarry a 20-ton pillar, move it hundreds of meters uphill, and erect it with such precision would require hundreds of people working together. It would require food, planning, and hierarchy. It would require a complex society, something that, according to our history books, should not have existed yet. Schmidt realized the terrifying implication. These people didn't build this temple because they had a city. They likely built the city so they could build the temple. When we think of a temple, we imagine a place of peace, a sanctuary. Many mainstream media outlets call Göbekli Tepe the real Garden of Eden. But if this is Eden, it is a garden of nightmares. Look closely at the carvings on the pillars. You won't find the gentle animals of a pastoral life. There are no herds of sheep, no goats, no symbols of fertility or harvest. Instead, the stones are crawling with death. Lions, spiders, scorpions, wild boars with bared teeth, and snakes, endless knots of snakes. This art is not celebrating nature, it is fearing it. The dominant figures are male predators, aggressive, deadly. Archaeologists argue that these carvings served a specific purpose: apotropaic magic, magic intended to ward off evil. This suggests that the people who built Göbekli Tepe lived in a world of constant terror. They weren't thanking the gods for the rain. They were likely building a fortress to keep the darkness at bay. There is another misconception we must correct. When you see pictures of the site today, it is open to the blue sky, bathed in sunlight. But 12,000 years ago, you would not have seen the sky here. Recent analysis suggests these enclosures were likely roofed, covered with wood and thatch. Imagine stepping inside. It would have been pitch black. The air would be stale, smelling of sweat, blood, and roasting meat. The only light would come from flickering torches. In that flickering firelight, the carvings on the pillars, the snakes, the spiders, the vultures, would appear to move. They would dance on the walls. For a Neolithic human, entering this space wasn't just a visit to a church. It was a descent into the underworld, a sensory overload designed to induce an altered state of consciousness. And then, there is Pillar 43, the Vulture Stone. This is the most controversial and terrifying piece of the puzzle. It depicts a vulture holding a circular object, perhaps the sun, perhaps a soul on its wing. Below it is a headless human body. For years, this was thought to represent sky burial, an ancient practice where the dead were left out for birds of prey to pick clean, freeing the soul. But recent findings have turned this theory into something more visceral. Archaeologists have found human skull fragments at the site. But these aren't just broken bones. They have deep, deliberate cuts carved into them, drilled holes. This implies that the people of Göbekli Tepe didn't just bury their dead. They dug them up. They defleshed the skulls, carved them, and likely hung them on the pillars. This was not a place for the living. It was a machine for processing the dead. Around 8000 BC, something inexplicable happened. After using this site for over 1,000 years, the people of Göbekli Tepe didn't just abandon it. They didn't just walk away and let time erode their masterpiece. They decided to erase it. They gathered thousands of tons of limestone rubble, soil, and refuse. And with painstaking effort, they manually buried the entire complex. Think about the scale of this. To build these structures was a monumental task, but to bury them, that required almost as much labor as the construction itself. They filled every room, covered every pillar, and packed it tight. They created a mountain over their cathedral. Why? Why would a civilization spend centuries building the greatest monument on Earth, only to deliberately hide it from the world? Was it to protect the sanctity of the temple? Or was it to seal something away? For decades, this remained a mystery. But recently, researchers have started looking at the pillars not just as art, but as data. Let's go back to Pillar 43, the Vulture Stone. Some scientists now argue that the animals carved here, the scorpion, the vulture, the crane, are not just animals. They correspond to constellations in the night sky. If you use computer software to rewind the night sky back to the time Göbekli Tepe was built, the symbols align perfectly with the stars of that era. It's a date stamp. But it doesn't point to the date the temple was built. It points to a date much further back. It points to roughly 10,950 BC. Why is this date important? Because 10,950 BC is the exact moment the world ended. Geologists call it the Younger Dryas. It was a sudden, cataclysmic period where the Earth, which was warming up from the Ice Age, was instantly thrown back into a deep freeze. For years, the cause was debated, but recent evidence suggests a cosmic impact. Fragments of a disintegrating comet struck the North American and European ice caps. The result was biblical: massive floods, global firestorms, a blocking of the sun, half of the world's megafauna, mammoths, saber-toothed cats, went extinct instantly, and humanity was brought to the brink of annihilation. The theory is terrifyingly simple. Göbekli Tepe is not just a temple. It is a memorial, a monument built by the survivors of that apocalypse. They carved the story of the comet into stone. They buried it to preserve the message. It's a time capsule sent to the future, a message from them to us. Beware. It happened before. It can happen again. For centuries, we have told ourselves a comforting story, a story of linear progress. We believed we started as savages and slowly, step by step, climbed the ladder to becoming the masters of the earth. But Göbekli Tepe shatters that ladder. It proves that civilization is not a straight line. It is a cycle, a fragile cycle that can be built, destroyed, and forgotten. The people who built this site were not primitive. In some ways, their stonemasonry, their astronomical knowledge, and their organizational skills rival our own capabilities given their tools. They were a high culture that vanished into the mist. As the author Graham Hancock famously said, "We are a species with amnesia. We have forgotten who we are. We have forgotten where we came from. And most dangerously, we have forgotten the catastrophes that shaped us." Göbekli Tepe is the cure for that amnesia. It is the first chapter of a book we thought we had lost. Today, less than 10% of Göbekli Tepe has been excavated. There are at least 16 more stone circles still buried underground, waiting in the darkness. Who knows what other secrets they hold? What other warnings are etched into those pillars? Perhaps the most haunting thought is not that they buried the temple to hide it, but that they buried it to save it for us. Because they knew that one day the stars would align again. They knew that the cycle would restart. And they wanted to make sure that when we woke up from our long sleep, the message would be waiting. So, what do you see when you look at these stones? Do you see a temple for the gods? A gathering place for the first farmers? Or do you see a desperate warning from a dying world? History is written by the victors, but sometimes the truth is written in stone.